What's up, everybody? We're getting into 9.7. Sorry, it says 9.6. It should be 9.7 up there. Get rid of that. Put a 7. Equations of circles. All right, so we're gonna split 9.2 into two parts. We'll have a video on equations of circles, how to graph circles, and the next one will be how to use completing the square to find the equation of a circle, right? So let's do a little brief review. We know that a circle is all points equidistant from another point, right? So remember, a line is technically a bunch of points all put together. So a circle is still a bunch of points, but every point is equidistant from one singular point, the center of the circle, right? So just a little graph here. So imagine that that's our point that we're equidistant from. We're going to go ahead and draw a green circle. All right, so notice that that point is 3 units north, south, east, and west from any given point on our circle, right? So we know we have our radius. Now here's where we're getting into the actual equation of a circle. Now the distance from the center out to a point, we're just going to call that point xy right now. We're not really going to worry about figuring out what its location is, okay? And then we have the center of our circle's location, and I'm going to put that as HK. So the reason why I'm putting that as HK is because when I give you the formula for the center of the circle, the H and the K, or excuse me, for the equation of a circle, the H and the K are going to be referencing where the center of the circle is located. All right. And so here is our generic equation of a circle. So this is going to have no numbers plugged in. It's going to be all variables. And I'm going to talk about where we're going to plug in the numbers and for which variables. So our equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So notice that x minus h is in parentheses as well as y minus k. And this is your standard form of a circle. So this is how you would want a circle or an equation to look in order to graph the circle, right? In order to pull the information out from the equation to be able to graph it. So one thing to note is that this x and this y will always be x and y. You won't have a number to plug in there. So you'll always have the x and the y within your equation. The spots you're going to plug in numbers, or where there will be numbers, are where the H is, the K is, and the R. And as I already said, the H and K, that's referencing the center of your circle. It's also important to note that it's X minus H and Y minus K. And I'll talk about that more. And then the R stands for, you know what, the radius. Okay. Notice it's R squared. So whatever this number is, when you look at your equation, you have to take the square root of it to get your radius. Okay? So as I said, HK is the center, right? So if it was x minus 5 plus y minus 2, h is 5 and y is 2. But if it's x plus 5, right, that the reason why it's plus, then that means your h is negative 5. So if it was like x plus 5, technically the way that that gets there is x minus negative 5, right? So that would turn into a negative 5 for our h. And I'll show you that in some more examples. R is the radius, and as I said, this is going to be like 36. Like, so if it's equal to 36, then my radius is the square root of that number, which is 6, okay? So if I wanted to take the center of a circle with a radius of 6 and put it into a standard equation, I would start off with x minus squared plus y minus squared equals something, right? So I'm going to plug in a number for my h, I'm going to plug in a number for my k, and then I'm going to have a number for my radius, okay? So my h is 4, so I plug the 4 in right here. My k is negative 1, so I plug the number negative 1 in there, and then I should have put a squared here. My radius is 6. So now if I convert this by simplifying everything, it becomes x minus 4 squared plus y, minusing a negative becomes plus, squared equals 36. And that right there is what an equation of a circle will look like that we are trying to graph or trying to find the center and the radius of. Okay, so all I did here was they gave us the center and the radius of the circle, and I created the equation of the circle. Let's do this one more time. Okay, so we have the center at -2, -3 with a radius of radical 7. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals our radius squared. Let's now simplify what's inside our parentheses. X minus -2 is x plus 2 squared, plus y minus -3 is y plus 3 squared, and the square root of 7 squared, that's rad 7 times rad 7, that's radical 49, or just 7. So that's what you would do if you were given the information, okay? But now let's look at it in a different context where I'm going to give you the equation of a circle, and we're going to try to find the center and the radius, okay? So now we have the equation x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 25. So as I look at this, my h, since it's positive 2, it's the opposite. So my h is -2. My k is 3. And then my radius is the square root of that number, which is 5. So the center of my circle is at -2, 3. And I have a radius of 5. And that's the information I would need in order to graph this circle. Okay? Let's do another one. So now we have x squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 11. So now in this case, notice how there's no h. So if there's no h like that, then your h is 0. My k, since it's a positive 1, is -1. And my radius is the square root of 11. Well, the square root of 11 is a decimal, so we're just going to leave that as radical 11. Combine those. My center is at 0, -1, and my radius of my circle is radical 11. That's it. That's all we got to do. Okay? So that's the first process, just being able to look at an equation and be able to say, okay, here's the center and here's the radius. Now let's go ahead and do some graphing. All right? So graphing a circle is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. The first thing we have to do is find the center of our circle. So in this case, my h is 4. My k is -1, because it's positive here, so it's a negative. And my radius is the square root of that number. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they just take this and say it's the radius, but it's always the square root of that number. So square root of 9 is 3. So to graph this, I'm going to go to my center, which is at 4, -1. So I'm going to go to the right 4, and I'm going to go down 1. Now I have a circle drawing tool, but you guys won't, right? So the easiest thing to do that I've found to make a somewhat good circle is count the radius in all 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. So I'm going to go up 3, I'm going to go to the right 3, go down 3, and go left 3. And then from there, I'm just going to do the best I can in trying to connect all the points, right? And obviously, look at that was terrible. So let's give it one more try. Still not that good. But as you can see, right, I have all the points needed to confirm I know what I'm doing, okay? Because I can go in any direction this way, and my radius is 3, okay? Go ahead and pause it. Try the next one on your own. Here my h is -4, my k is 0, my radius is 4. So the center of my circle is at negative 4, 0, with a radius of 4. Go to the left 4, right here. Count out 4 in each direction. And then if I use my circle drawing tool, you'll see it gets a lot prettier. All right. Don't worry about your circles being pretty. I'm not going to grade you on that. Okay. So that's how we can get the center and the radius from an equation in order to graph the circle. Okay. Last scenario. What if the circle has a center at negative 3, negative 2, and we know a point that the circle passes through? So in this case, it's 1, negative 2. When you think about what is the equation of the circle, right? So we're trying to get it into this x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared format. Okay? And so, oops. First thing we need is the center. So we know that our center is at negative 3, negative 2, right? So my h is negative 3, my k is negative 2. But what we don't know is the radius. And in order to find the radius, there's a couple different options. You could plot this out and you could count it. But the way that, and the problem with plotting that out and counting it, let's go backwards for a second. Like let's say they gave us this point over here, right, on our circle. I can't really count diagonally, right? And also kind of graphing can be a waste of time sometimes. It's kind of unneeded. So instead, we need to figure out the distance between the center and the point that we're passing through. And you guessed it, the good old distance formula, okay, which is y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared, or any order you want to do it, okay? x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Because you're adding them together, it doesn't really matter. I think I normally do it with the x's, so I'll redo that order for you guys. So x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And that's the distance formula of how to find the distance between 2 points. So in this instance, our 2 points are negative 3, negative 2, and 1, negative 2. Those are the points we're trying to find the distance between. So I'm going to call this my 1s, this my 2s. x2 minus x1, so 1 minus negative 3 squared plus y2 minus y1, negative 2 minus negative 2 squared. 1 minus negative 3 is 1 plus 3, that's 4, so that's 16. Negative 2 minus negative 2, that's adding, that's 0. So 0 squared is 0. So our radical 16 is what we're left with, so our radius equals 4. So our distance between negative 3, negative 2, and 1, negative 2 is 4. So our radius is 4. So the equation of my circle then is x plus 3, because my h is negative 3, squared, plus y plus 2 squared, because my k is negative 2, equals 16, the radius squared. Okay, that's important to know that it's the radius squared. All right. So technically, I guess you could have stopped at this point here, but it's the number underneath the radical. Okay. Let's do another one. So a circle that has a center at negative 2, 4 and passes through negative 6, 7. Now this one, notice guys that the y values in that previous problem were the same. So in that case, I could have just looked at the difference between the x's. But in this one, nothing is the same, not the x's nor the y's. So here's where the distance formula really comes in handy. So distance equals x2, we'll call this the 1, this the 2. Negative 6 minus negative 2 squared plus 7 minus 4 squared. Negative 6 minus negative 2 is negative 6 plus 2. It's negative 4. So negative 4 squared. 7 minus 4 is 3. So that's 3 squared. Negative 4 squared is 16. 3 squared is 9. So 16 plus 9 is 25. Okay? So the square root of 25 is 5. So our radius is 5. My h is negative 2. My k is 4. So my equation, x plus 2, because our h is negative, squared, plus y minus 4, because our 4 is positive here, squared, equals 25, whatever the radius is squared. So for your homework, guys, you have to do a couple problems like this. You got to do a couple graphing, and then a couple where you're finding the equation. Good luck.